Now let me tell you about the good things and how they came to Henry. The progress that had begun to change the face of Willoughby soon slithered out Salem Pike in the form of a visit to Whispering Pines by 3 of Henry's neighbors. After wiping their feet at the door and being invited into Esther's sweet-smelling kitchen, they were dutifully seated at the round table for coffee. They seemed rather embarrassed, and after chit-chat about the crops, Mr. Danner pulled out a legal-looking paper and said in a funny voice, "Well, Henry, just well get down to business. This here's a petition. Clayton Peters' idea was that with all that new tax revenue the county's got, due to the new plant at Chamberstown and the way Willoughby's booming, sure looked like the right time to press 'em for improving Salem Pike." Ed Stevens added his enthusiasm. "You know, Henry, Salem Pike's being widened and graveled or blacktopped would cut 8 miles off the trip from Willoughby to Chamberstown. Not only that, but we've been talking, Henry, and Salem Pike would become the through route to the county seat, and that's going to bring a lot of prosperity to all of us. Why, if lots at Willoughby are going for $1,500, think what your upper meadow would be worth before long if that road opened up." Henry had a troubled look on his serious face, and slowly, with the feeling that no one was going to hear him, he said, "But, Ed, I don't want to sell my upper meadow. That's the best piece of hay ground in this valley. Well, my mares know every inch of that field, and somehow it just don't seem right that bulldozers and strangers should tear it up." Charlie Moore spoke up. "I know how you feel, Henry, but this thing means a lot to all of us, and you know, you can't fight progress. It's going to come, and you'll see. It'll be good for all of us. Think what that extra money could mean to you and Esther and the kids. No more grubbing in the ground to make out." Somehow, Henry had never thought of his life as grubbing in the ground to make out. It had seemed to him to be a good life, and it was his by choice. He looked at Esther, his eyes pleading for her advice, but she looked away and soon got up to fetch more coffee. Fred Danner said, "Esther, what do you think about it?" For a while she just fussed with the stove, and at last in a quiet voice she said, "Whatever Henry thinks is best about it is all right with me." Henry cleared his husky voice and promised, "Well, we'll talk about it and let you know. How soon does something have to be done?" 2 weeks, Ed Stevens replied, and then added in a pleading tone, "And remember, Henry, a lot depends on your signature. All the commissioners think highly of you and your father. You got a good name in this county, and your opinion will carry a lot of weight. And I'd hate to think you'd use that influence to keep the rest of us from the good things in life." With the usual thanks to Esther for her hospitality and the small talk of people saying goodbye, the meeting adjourned as abruptly as it had convened, and soon Henry and Esther were alone in the kitchen. In the 2 weeks that followed, Henry was deep in thought about the petition. The phrase, "the good things in life," bothered him a lot. One day he came in from the barn and blurted out, "Esther, I got to know something. Do you and the children feel you're being deprived of the good things in life?" Esther looked hurt, and putting her arms around his solid shoulders, said, "Henry, I've never felt we've missed anything in life. We have each other, and as long as that's true, we'll never lack for anything. I've been thinking, too, Henry, maybe we should sign for the benefit of the others. Nothing can change our lives. Whispering Pines will always be the same, just as it was with your father and grandfather. They moved with the times, and nothing happened. Let them build a road. Like I said, Henry, as long as we have each other, nothing can change us." Henry kissed her on the end of her nose like he always did when he was preoccupied, and then he hurried out to the barn. The next day, as Henry was trying to get Daisy in the barn lot, Ed Stevens' wagon drove in the lane, and with him were Charlie Moore and Fred Danner. Henry hurried to the house to meet them and walked into the kitchen in time to hear Esther say, "It's like I told Henry, Fred, there's nothing to fear in progress. It can only change those who want to be changed. We don't want to keep anybody from the good things in life. It was that phrase again that seemed to trouble Henry. It seemed to eat away at the security he had always felt in his way of life. He had never felt he had to take a back seat to anyone. He felt confident that he had given his children the best heritage life had to offer. Now he wasn't so sure. All this talk about the good things in life and prosperity and money making them possible disturbed him. But like Esther said, it didn't seem like anything could change unless they changed, and Henry was determined that would never happen. After the usual formalities of greeting, Fred said, "Well, Henry, you know why we're here. We got to turn this petition over to Mr. Weigel, who's promised to take it to the meeting of the commissioners on Friday. And you ought to know this. He said it was a sure thing if you signed it. Now, you know they got the influence of the post office department behind it, for it means Clayton Peters can sell that old horse and get him a car to carry the rural route." Henry thought of old Ted and wondered what he'd do out in pasture all day and if he'd missed the sugar handouts along the route. Seemed like that change in Clayton's life would be a good one, but Mayo would never be the same without old Ted. Henry said quickly, "I'm going to sign, but not because I want to. But it sure don't seem right that I should do anything that would keep you people from the good things in life." Now he found that he had used that phrase himself, and the more he heard it and used it, the more it seemed like maybe there was something he had missed. Well, thought Henry, we'll see. He picked up the pen offered by Charlie Moore and signed Henry L. Morgan. And underneath, Esther in her fine hand wrote Esther A. Morgan, and it was done. They shook hands all around, and with much light conversation, the men made their way to the lane where their wagon and team stood patiently by. As Ed Stevens picked up the lines to turn his wagon around, he said with a grin, "Take a good look at this old rig, Henry, for if this thing goes through, I'll be cruising down that big road in a new car. I already got a standing offer for the corner of my big meadow, and you know where those big red oaks stand?" Henry couldn't think of anything to say, and they drove out with the creaking and rattling of the wagon mingled with the excited talk of the three men. As they disappeared in the turn in Salem Pike, Henry thought about those red oaks of Aids. Grandpa Morgan used to tell him that old Chief Tecumseh himself used to camp there when the Shawnee had hunted the valley. And it must have been true, because Henry still had the arrowheads he found there when he was a boy. He wondered what the bulldozers would do to it all, and what Chief Tecumseh would think if he could see the progress that was coming to Salem Pike.